We are live. Hey, how's it, family? Thank you for watching. In case you didn't know by the title and things up on your screen, my name is Brother Greg, aka The Real Gila. We also have a very special guest. I think that's his name up there on the top. I was trying to hide it for later, but hey, there it is. I just want to say thank you for being here. Do me a favor, repost this, reshare, whatever platform you're on. We are live on YouTube, Twitch, and X. And I will upload later on Spotify. Today's episode is brought to you by Dubby Energy Drinks. I just partnered up with them, and I'm really excited just to kind of share a little bit with you on my journey. And just to be transparent with you guys, I spend a minimum of $3,000 a year just on Red Bull. And I'm just saying Red Bull, and I'm not bashing it by any means, but this is the product, Dubby Energy Drinks, and there's links all in my bio. So even though I'm partnered up with them, I'm giving them an honest review for the next 2 weeks, and I'll be posting reviews. But if you want to try them out, w.gg, that's my promo code, GLO808. And one of the cool things about them is that there's no artificial colors, food coloring, there's no fillers, there's no maltodextrins. Anybody that's into bodybuilding or health, you know that maltodextrin is one of the worst fillers, carb sources you could ever have. And so they don't have that. And they have some really cool flavors like Dub Sludge, which is one of my favorite flavors. So anyways, thank you for listening to that short little ad. Today's guest, I can't say enough about him. He's got a very huge bio. He is a neuropsychologist. I just met him literally last week here on X, on Spaces, heard him talking, and I found out that he has a Ph.D. in neuropsychology and also in forensic psychology with over 30 years of experience. And just listening to him share his wealth of information really prompted me to say, hey, dude, I got to get you, man. Let's just talk. And so I'm just very fortunate that he's here today. And for those of you that are just jumping in, thank you. Be sure to share this out. Make sure that you repost this. If you are on Twitch, thank you. I'll read up all you guys' comments as soon as I get caught up. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we have Dr. Heath with us here on our episode 22 of Glow Sessions. Yes, sir. Finally got you. Ladies and gentlemen.
Wow, what an intro, man. That is the best, most relaxing intro to any podcast I've ever been on.
Well, thank you. It gets me somewhat calm because, you've been doing this for a while, and for me as well, and I get nervous every single time. And it's nice to have, it's a good nervous, right? So it's not a bad or negative nervous. It just makes sure that I have my points and all that. But man, I'm glad to have you. It's really an honor. It truly is.
Well, thanks for inviting me on. I really appreciate it. Look forward to a great discussion.
Well, for those that are on X, I can't see your comments within my native software just because we're waiting for Elon Musk to get it together. So I'm going to be using an iPad to read comments. And so if anybody has any questions, please post them up. And today we're going to talk a little bit about some masculinity. But before we do that, can we just talk about you for a second, Dr. Heath? You are the second psychologist that I've had on here, and I'm so, I want to say honored, and that's such a cliche word sometimes I feel, but I really am honored, like, to be able to just learn. So whenever I do these, it's kind of a cheat code for me to be able to learn from people like yourself, and the fact that you've got all that years of experience. In terms of Spaces and X, because that's how I met you. What led you to do Spaces, or what was the draw for you on Spaces?
I love learning new things. My addiction is learning new things. Learning new things keeps my brain young. One of the best things you can do for staving off cognitive decline as you get older is to learn new things. And Really a good measure of the impact it's having on your brain is the level of discomfort. So if you're trying to learn, say, a new language or a new skill, um, how uncomfortable it is a fairly good measure on how great an impact it's going to have on you. And I've always been uncomfortable with social media. I've never liked social media. I've spent decades talking about the downside of social media, and it just seemed like a pain in the butt. And but I made a lot of money out of it because people would come to me after they ruined their relationships. Spending too much time on social media, failing tests because they're on social media, finding another person with whom they had some type of inappropriate relationship with on social
Mm,
media. And I would ask a question that people really kind of flinched at. I would just pick on the other guy's Facebook, and
yeah.
I would say something that they thought was very outlandish, and that was, why not just delete Facebook? Why are you letting social media ruin your life? And so, long story short, I had a thing with social media, and then I began to see some value in it,
Hmm.
and then I had some very negative experiences. Everybody, I guess, runs into trolls, and but then I found a good community of which, that you're a part, of very supportive people, people that really wanted to learn new things, people that just weren't there to harass and criticize. And my initial reason for getting on was to give back, and everybody can't afford therapy from me, and I don't do therapy on social media, but I talk about psychological concepts that people may not get otherwise. And there's a whole flood of pseudo psychological information on social media. And it's kind of my mission to straighten some of that out. We're a society that is diagnosis happy and label happy,
Hmm.
and I'm existentialist at heart. So I think that labels diminish who we are. I don't think that labels, especially diagnostic labels, really help us. I think that they may harm more than they help. So I'm on there to interact and have open, genuine, intentional conversations with those that are willing to challenge their ideas, and I'm certainly willing to challenge mine. And so I guess just to kind of give back, I don't make any money off of Twitter or X. That's not really my purpose, but I just like having these conversations.
You know, you brought up, I'm trying to remember the actual verbiage, but there's a lot of labels, and there's a lot of spaces that I've seen recently in regards to mental health. And this, I'm not passing judgment in any way, but I do kind of cringe sometimes when I jump in there and I hear the type of advice that's being given. And I'm not saying these people are not qualified. That's not what I'm saying. But when I hear the type of advice, for me, and I rarely preach here on X because that's kind of what I do outside of social media, but I rarely give any type of advice when it's life changing unless I'm qualified to do so. And even if I'm qualified, that doesn't necessarily give me permission to do so. And so we're talking about labels and people using this mental health and putting themselves in a box. I feel like I might be wrong. Sometimes people, it's like a hip thing to do to label yourself certain things. Am I wrong in feeling that way? Or, I mean, have you seen that or is it just me?
It's really weird. I've been in mental health since the early '80s. It was really, of course, stigmatized back then. You wouldn't proudly say that I have a counselor. Um, People believe that showed that there was you had a weakness, and there was a lot of misunderstanding. But it's really kind of taken a gigantic shift, a sea change, if you will, where to be the cool kid on the block, you have to have a diagnosis.
Yeah.
And for a clinician like me, I don't know. I've been around so long. I think that's really strange, that we're now kind of competing with each other's diagnosis. And I'll have people come and say, well, I'm, ADD, or I'm bipolar, or, and I'll say, well, do you want to be bipolar? And people are very partial to their diagnoses. And if I challenge that, because there's so much misdiagnosis, and a lot of that is because of self-diagnosis, but people, I don't know, they sometimes prefer the label over their own name. They find more meaning in it. And I think it's in a world where we are starving for meaning. We're really starving for meaning, starving for a reason to get out of bed. Who was it? Camus, I think, Albert Camus. And I say this with great care, but Camus did say this. He said that I think he said he struggled every day with whether to commit suicide or not. Yeah, I think he said, I'm either going to go get a cup of coffee or shoot myself in the head. Well, that's alarming, but it makes the point about how every human struggles with the boredom and absurdity of life. Just the chaos, the absurdity, the boredom of life. And I think we pick some of the strangest things to make it interesting. Like some people will pick a fight with a spouse or family member because they're just used to doing that. Or they grew up that was the pattern, that things weren't normal unless things were abnormal. And so we look for some meaning to the chaos, and we come up fairly empty. And I think meaning is in the mix. I exist because I'm supposed to. I find meaning in making my latte, my coffee every morning. I find meaning in taking my dog out to potty. I find meaning in talking to great people like you. When something doesn't go my way, I find meaning in trying to figure it out and see what value there is in that. But the whole diagnostic thing, yeah, we've come to really over pathologize. When I started, on my shelf over there, I won't get up and get it, but on my shelf is a book called The Diagnostic Statistical Manual, and it's from the early 50s. I have a copy from the early 50s, the first one, and it's about this thick. It's more of a pamphlet, and the current one is 10 times the size. It's maybe 2.5, 3 inches thick or something like that, and it's just chock full of diagnoses, because the only thing better than a book of 200 diagnoses is a book of 400 diagnoses.
Yeah.
I make a lot of money on diagnoses, but I don't like them. I really avoid giving them to people because people come to embrace them and use them to define themselves. But the only label that I'm really partial to that is human. The highest label that you can ever have is not a people group, not a diagnostic category, not a pathology, but as a human. But to a lot of people, that's not enough. There's got to be more. I don't think there's more. I think human is the best you could ever be.
While you were talking, all I could think about was identity. And one of the things I teach, even my children, and through some of our leadership teams in the past, I've always used the example of LeBron James in terms of his identity and who is he. And of course, the number one question, he's a basketball player. And so now I would flip it and say, well, who is Michael Jordan? And they always say, well, he was a basketball player. So I said, what's the difference? And, it's like, well, one is doing it, one is not. So are you saying if we do something, that's what we are, and if we don't do it anymore, we're not that anymore? And so I make the argument that their identity is not what they do. For me, I'm I'm not whatever labels I have. I'm a son, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and from a Christian perspective, I'm a creation that someone decided, hey, I want to make this man into this creation. And so I think that whole identity, I think people are not, I feel like there's a misplaced identity. Like you said, like human is like, we don't need these labels or titles to be validated. But I think some people don't feel validated enough just as a person, for whatever reason, you know? And I heard your story and that really broke my heart, but also gave me encouragement when I heard you talking about your past, the last spaces. And you talking about just being brought up in a certain way with your father and then your mother. I think that was your story. I'm pretty sure it was your story.
Mm-hmm.
Powerful. And where you are now, that your identity is pretty solid. You know who you are. At least that's what I gather. So identity is definitely something I feel that people don't have today. And that's why there's a lot of these misplaced of labels or who they are or titles. But it is cringe worthy for me when I jump into a space. I just feel really sad sometimes, concerned, and I wish I could jump in, but it's, I jump out because I'm just not in a position to offer anything at this time. And I just get out and I say, Lord, you just bless them, because I just hope nobody does anything drastic. I've been in a few of those spaces and it concerns me. So I'm glad that you're here. We're talking about that.
Well, I think I have my numbers right. I looked it up one time. I didn't look it up before the show. I didn't think we'd be talking about it, but I think that there are 92 billion people, 92 billion. You guys can Google it or something, who once were living, but now they're not. 92 billion, I think, is the number. There are 8 billion of us that currently are, but not for long.
Yeah.
I mean, it'll be over quicker than you could possibly imagine. It wasn't too many days ago. I was, young and full of, as they say where I'm from, piss and vinegar. And I was 24.
How old are you now?
I am. I try to find a clever way of saying that. I'm 3 years shy of 3 score.
Well, I will tell you this, bro.
3 years shy of 3 score.
You age well. You don't age like cheese. You age like wine. The other thing is, whatever profile picture you've got, those traps, brother. Just saying.
Okay. You're looking at my other account. Yeah, Real Men Psych.
Yeah.
My wife took that picture. And well, that's part of what I'm talking about. Is I've been given gifts, and I think one of the gifts we've been given, and I'm a believer also, is our bodies.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite scriptures: "Know ye not that you're not your own? You are bought with a price."
Yeah.
So I ask people, what if you spent a lot of time, blood, sweat, and tears to make me a gift? Me, Heath, you bring me this gift. It's all packaged up. I take it, say thank you. You come back in a year's time and you say, well, hey, Heath, what'd you do with the gift that I made for you? And I say, oh, I took it in the woods and urinated on it and set it on fire. Well, I think you'd be very unhappy. So I look at my life as a gift. And if I mistreat my body, I'm mistreating the gift I've been given. If I'm mistreating my mind or using my mind for evil purposes, that I am misusing the gift I've been giving. And I view that as a lack of respect to all who've come before me, those 92, 93 billion people, including my dad and my mother, and my stepmom, and my Uncle John and my friend Darren that drowned in a swimming hole called Lost End back when we were young. And a friend of mine, his name was Jimmy, who was shot when he was in custody of the local police department. And my friend I grew up with named Parnell, who was killed in a car wreck out in California. And my next door neighbor who died of cancer. I'm really being so disrespectful to them, to not fully live my life. And so I wake up every day and I try to really figure out, what can I do to, I don't know, make a difference. I hope I made a difference this morning for my wife, putting the dishes up out of the dishwasher, you know, and helping dry the dog off. My dog Scruffy, after he had to have a bath because he got sick all over himself. And if you're only living for yourself, you have a very shallow life.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I spent a lot of years in long-term care talking with people who were on their way out of this life. And that was the regret. None ever expressed regret for not making enough money. None ever expressed regret for not being famous or not having, well, they didn't have social media back then, but not having really enough of anything except for healthy relationships. It was always the only regrets I ever have heard from people on their deathbed revolves around relationship, relationship, relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was educational for me. I made a commitment not to do that, and I work at that every day.
Now, you say long-term care. Was that for a family member, or you actually did work in?
I was a consultant. I was hired right out of grad school. It was a world-class job that I never deserved. I just lucked out. And this company said, "Hey, we'll give you a plane ticket every week, and we'll fly you all over the U.S., and we'll give you a company car, an expense account, and a white coat to wear when you're walking into the facility," which I never liked. And I would fly out every Monday and fly back every Friday, sometimes Saturday. And I ran into all kinds of incredible people. I ran into everybody from people that fought in wars for General Patton. I remember one guy. I was amazed that he actually served under General George Patton. And I said, "Oh, wow, old blood and guts." And he kind of scoffed and he said, "Yeah, it was his guts and our blood," so he wasn't a big Patton fan. Evidently, Patton wasn't exactly like George C. Scott, the one that played him in the famous movie. To gangsters, there were former gangsters we'd run into, and people fairly, some fame in movies and things like that. A lot of the folks wound up in long-term care facilities. But no, I was a consultant, and my favorite moments were getting to just hear the collective wisdom of people that are so often cast aside, that you and I one day will be in that group of the people we call elderly. We'll be looking at the mirror at ourselves. So I think we should provide more care and respect for our older citizens.
I have a ton of respect for anybody in long-term care, because that's why I'm here in Oregon. A lot of people don't know my story. So my brother left Hawaii 3 years ago. He bought some property out here. His company flew him out here. And my wife and I were a different story. We're able to, we were fine in Hawaii. He wanted to buy more land. In Hawaii, you can't buy acreage. It's very hard. It's very expensive. So he gotten COVID from a coworker, and he overcame that. But then I think 2 weeks after he had tested negative, my dad found him on the floor, and they didn't know how long he was on the floor. It was at least, at the most, 3 days. And so, called 911 from Hawaii. In Oregon, fortunately, he lives right next to the hospital. He had 7 strokes, 2 blood clots, one in the midbrain and one in the cerebellum. If he had had just one up
Wow.
here, it would have been, I'm not saying fine, it would have been a lot better. And you know,
Yeah.
right, because you're in that field.
He's lucky to survive that.
He's not supposed to. And I learned a lot about the medical industry. I learned a lot about palliative care. I learned a lot about all those fancy words they use, which is basically let him die.
Hmm.
And so, because of what I felt could have been malpractice, we got an attorney, and it's been a long journey ever since. And so, I'm glad that we got an attorney because they did all the legal language that I didn't understand. And so, he's in a long-term care facility now. And I have so much respect for those guys because the work that they do with going through COVID and having to deal with, my brother is the youngest person in this facility, by the way, because he's only 50,
Oh,
51,
wow.
51. But you know, I have a ton of respect for people that are in long-term care because it's not an easy job, and it's
Yeah.
usually underappreciated,
Underpaid.
underpaid for sure, and there's usually not a lot of family support. I
I'll
think
tell you that the people listening, when you get to be elderly, if you require long-term care, we will all regret not putting more pressure on our politicians to better fund long-term care so that there's better care. As it is, unfortunately, a lot of long-term care is sold to the one at the provider at the lowest dollar. So I'm not really sure that we want to have ourselves provided for at the cheapest pay possible, but that's the way it is in long-term care. My mother was in long-term care after that blood clot went to her heart for 4 decades.
that's a long time, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, she was 20 26 years old when she
Was
went
she was
to,
she coherent like in the no? Okay.
you know, I mean, I say no. Um, that was in 1970. And so we didn't really know much about that kind of state of consciousness. And sadly, I think a lot of people wrote her off. And it scared my dad. Um, my dad would go to see her, and she would start making these really loud, strange noises, and he thought that he was making it worse.
Hmm.
So he stopped going. He didn't intend anything bad or evil, but he stopped going because he thought he was making it worse, you know? I think that was my mother's way of communicating with him in the way she had left, was just to make the noises, but we didn't know. And I struggle a lot with that. I was a kid, you know, what am I gonna do? I was 4 years old. I and even in the mid '80s when I was in psychology in college, undergrad school, we still didn't know. I think I only came to kinda understand that level of consciousness, after she died.
Hmm.
I didn't the pieces didn't really fit together about the many different variations of consciousness, and you know, there's locked in syndrome, and people back then just called it a vegetative state, but we know that consciousness really goes very deep in human beings, and they're so much more aware of so many more things than we think that's possible.
I totally agree. And you know, I'm not a clinical psychologist or even a medical doctor. What I do know is there's something powerful about the connection of the heart. And I think that transcends all medical expertise because my brother is not supposed to be alive. Number one, he's not supposed to move the right side of his body, and he started moving that.
Wow.
And of course, the doctors will always say, "Well, there's always a room for a miracle," and I get
Yeah.
that. Um, but he would have what you would consider the locked in syndrome. But there was a moment where my wife was in the room with him. This is during COVID time, and he started to talk. So he has a trach and a peg,
uh,
and so he didn't have the valve in. but he started talking, and it was very audible. He was saying, "Hey, Greg," and my wife called me on a video phone, and she says, "Listen." And he started saying, "Hey, Greg." That's
Oh,
exactly what it sounded
wow.
like. And he said it like 4 or 5 times, and I just started weeping because I haven't heard his voice in a year. And so what I did was I made a promise to him. I said, "Bryce, I'm so proud of you that you're talking. I know you don't have your valve in." So they shaved his head because of he had skin issues, and so I knew my brother loved his hair. So I said, "You know what, Bryce? I'm gonna grow my hair out just for you because I know how much you loved your hair." I was bald at the time, and so that's why I have the long hair, is because he started talking. And even though he has that quote unquote locked in syndrome, he is able to communicate. We have a computer that tracks his eyeballs. He can't use
Mm,
it effective just because his eye, one eye goes this way. And
yeah.
but that whole idea of a doctor diagnosing, and I respect them, but by all means, but they don't have the final authority or final say in my brother's recovery.
Well, you have to understand the position doctors are in when they're giving a prognosis. Interestingly, maybe sadly, but in our litigious society, um, doctors are safer giving you bad news and it turning out better than giving you better news and it turning out worse, because the second will get you sued much more quickly because you told us this grand thing was going to happen and it didn't happen. So they're much better legally if they
Mhm.
will under promise and over deliver.
That makes a lot of sense because it'll save them from malpractice or being
Oh
sued.
yeah.
Or, yeah.
Plus, to just get a family's hopes up. I disagree with the either or thing. I would simply say I don't know. All kinds of things are possible. What's going to happen? Who knows? No one knows that. But it's think of it this way. Often with a traumatic brain injury, it's like the person has been transported to a foreign country where no one speaks their language and they don't speak the language of anyone else. So it's kind of a situation like Helen Keller, where somebody had to go to great pains to learn to communicate with this young girl who could neither see nor hear,
Hmm.
and pulled it off. Most people just give up. No judgment, because I mean it's a horrible, horrible thing. But most people just give up. And I will say about my mother, what I do know about her is she would not have wanted me to sacrifice my life sitting in a nursing home room with her.
Mhm.
Visiting more, yeah, I wish I would have known to do that. I just believe what everyone told me, and all the doctors said. Really, there's no one here but a body. Somewhere deep down, I don't think I ever believed or accepted that. But now I wish I wouldn't have. But then I didn't know any better, so I'm not going to spend my life beating myself up over that, because my mother would not want me to beat myself up over that. Well, that beating myself up over that would be a disservice to my mother, and there's nothing I can do about it now.
I will say, I can kind of understand maybe your father not, visiting, or because there was a time where I felt guilt for the state that my brother is in and quote unquote keeping him alive. But had he not been able to um, verbally or make sounds or thumbs up, thumbs down, because every life saving surgery he had to have, I always consulted him. Do you want this? Because if you do, that's why I'm here. We'll stay here. Man, we'll walk you through this, Bryce. If that's what you want, you tell me right now. And every time he said, "I want to fight," I'll say, "Okay." Then that's so we moved my whole family up here, and that's why we're here. And it's like, but there was a guilt for a while. Like, am I making the right choice? Am I making the right decision for him? And
Yeah.
the saving grace is that I wasn't making it for him. I was just being his mouthpiece.
Yeah. Yeah. What would he want? Now,
Mm.
for your listeners, let me just make a bit of a differentiation here. And this is one of my big things is use of the F word. It's a 4-letter word, FEEL, feel, not the other one. That's an Archer term, by the way. But luckily, guilt is not a feeling. So when people say they, quote, F word, feel guilty, what they're really saying is I feel disgust and it's pointed at me. It's pointed at myself. So it's not guilt, it's self disgust. Now, self disgust is created because we have a belief that we are guilty of something. Guilt is a belief, it is actually a legal determination, usually made by a court, a trier of fact. But the question would be, could we take you to court on this issue, me, for instance, of doing something wrong in context with my mother, and I'll be found guilty of that, the legal determination? And the answer is no. So I encourage people to, number one, really sort out, especially as men. Of course, women go through this too, but no one really does guilt better than men. Men are guilt experts. They're one of the famous things in superhero movies these days are male superheroes beating themselves up over stuff. Uh, and that's a mistake. You know, you're not helping yourself. You're not helping those you serve by casting that kind of judgment on yourself. And by the way, that is one of the roots of suicide, because eventually men get to thinking they're so guilty, worthless, despicable, that and this is, I know this sounds ironic, but they literally believe that there's such a threat to themselves and everyone that they care about that they want to take themselves off the map with suicide. And that's the reason that about half of men will never talk to anybody about their issues. Half. That's why about 79% of all suicides in the U.S. are men. That is why when suicide attempts do happen, men are far and above more likely to be successful because they use more lethal means. And where does this come from? It always starts with a thought process that men work themselves up to and begin to view themselves as the enemy. They view themselves as the enemy.
That is that is so heavy. That you said half.
Half. Half will suffer in silence and never say a word to anybody.
That's me, brother. I'll be very honest with you. That's me for a good portion of my marriage. Was walking through hardships, carrying a lot of weight, because I was, I'm a product of the 80s. I grew up on Mr. T, A-Team, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Rambo. It's like I got to be that guy. And there came a time in a marriage where I had to allow my wife access underneath my armor,
Yeah.
because she is my helpmate. She is the the reason why I'm able to do what I do. She's the one that I've been blessed with, and I was that guy that I would carry a lot of the. I think that one of the turning points is when I got shingles. I was 34, and I said, "How in the heck did I get shingles? What the heck?" And so the doctor says, typically it's because of stress. And I said, "Brother, I'm not carrying any stress. I can promise you that." And then I thought about it. There was so much going on in my life, Dr. Heath. I'm like, okay, I get it. I tuck it away somewhere and I lock it and I hide it. But in the meantime, it's festering and I'm carrying that weight. And it's like I didn't talk to anybody. And so finally, later on in the second half of my marriage, I'm a little bit more open with my wife. I'm not all the way there because there's still some insecurity in regards to my strength that I hang on to.
Well, that I find that so interesting. Uh, when I talk to a fellow believer, which I do a lot, um, that has that belief system, because there's this book. You might have heard of it. It has 66 books in it. It's one book of 66 books. It's got 2 sections.
Yeah, yeah.
The newest section, what's that called? I think that's actually called the New Testament or
I
something
believe
like
that's
that.
what it's called. I know it's on the bestseller list of all time. That
I
I
think
know.
it is. I think
Yeah,
that's the one. There's this guy, he wrote it.
yeah.
Um, but it says it's the twain one flesh theology. To put it, to kind of modernize it, that's why a person will leave their mother and father, and they'll cling to their spouse, and they too, get on camera here, they too will become one flesh. So if I'm not letting, or my wife in to hear the vault of my skull, then I'm not really doing my job. And if something's not good for me, it's not good for the relationship. And if it's not good for the relationship, it's not good for her. So she will ask me what's wrong, and I will tell her. Sometimes, not all the time. I mean, I don't sit on the couch and moan and groan about everything, but I I, I answer the freaking question, you know. And then she'll say, "Can I help with anything?" And if she can, I'll talk about stuff. I try to educate her on my mindset. I've got this weird, freaky way of, I don't know why, of kind of thinking about things like a man. I guess because I'm a man, I tend to think about things like a man, which is different from how she thinks about things. But she finds value in how I think about things. And so no, it's really a journey that we take together. I read a book one time that talked about British special forces. And according to the book, they have a saying, a man alone is a man already lost. A
Mm.
man alone is a man already lost. So we don't need to take this journey together. We it takes a community, and that starts out with our spouses. And I'm sure you're very blessed. I'm very blessed myself to have a wonderful life partner of 4 decades now
Wow,
to be on this journey with me. And we kind of watch each other's back. Um, and she's my closest counselor. She has a much more stable head than I do. Her head is firmly fixed on her shoulders, and sometimes my head is in Timbuktu. And she brings my feet back down to planet Earth. But there's a thing that one of my favorite targets tends to be this word. What words are powerful? Words are powerful. We should be very careful with words. And I had a soldier one time talk to me, and he was having trouble talking about it because I don't think the word fit very well in his mouth, but he was doing his best. I'm trying so hard to be vulnerable with my wife. Mm, I know that's gotten a lot of press. It's a buzzword.
yeah.
I'll just say I'm not a fan. When I was traveling around doing consults, we would do risk mitigation. Risk mitigation. Now, let me just say, everybody listening, you can pick whatever word you want. I'm not trying to tell you how to think. I'm trying to share with you how it is possible to think. Uh, I traveled around doing risk mitigation. If I was in California, facilities in California are vulnerable to earthquake
Yeah.
and brownouts. And when I travel to Texas, they are vulnerable to heat waves. In Arizona, in Arkansas, they are vulnerable to tornadoes. Um, and if it's in the north, are vulnerable to big snowstorms, things like that. So vulnerable, it can't mean two different things. It's either you're at risk by doing this, or I think a better word is genuine. I have lots of vulnerabilities. I'm vulnerable to getting cancer. I have a family history of cancer. I'm vulnerable to having a heart attack, but those aren't good things. Those are bad things. So I would recommend let's not mix terms. And men, no, you don't have to be vulnerable. It doesn't mean you're vulnerable to anything.
Hmm.
Sharing your thoughts with your wife, saying, I'm struggling with this. I'm having a hard time with this. I'm having these scary thoughts in my head that I don't want to have, and I want to let you know about those. I think about I don't deserve to live. I think that you would be better off without me. I think I'd be better off if I was never born. I think I'd be better off if I get hit by a truck. See, there's less danger to you as a person once you have shared that with somebody. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're vulnerable to anything. As a matter of fact, you're more vulnerable to suicide by not sharing that out. So that's kind of one of my little soapboxes I get on is the use of words. And when you're sharing your thoughts, when you're being real, when you're being genuine, that's just being genuine. It doesn't mean you're vulnerable to anything. You might say, well, they may make fun of me. Well, if you're sharing this with somebody that makes fun of you, then you're sharing it with the wrong person. But the other thing that we need to do in relationships is tell our spouses, I'm about to share something with you that's very difficult for me. Is that okay? They'll probably say yes. And then before you share it, say, here's what I need from you. I told my wife the other day, I said, I need to tell you something. Everything is okay. Please don't freak out. That's what I need from you. Freaking out will not help me. So I told her. And I had gone to Home Office Depot to get a connector for a mic, actually. I brought my mic with me, 2 mics, actually. I laid all the mess on the countertop. Well, they didn't have what I needed. I had my wallet out. I was about ready to pay for whatever they handed me, and they didn't have it. So I gathered everything back up, put it back in the truck. I thought I'll stop by the new coffee shop, get my wife a Frappuccino, get myself one. No wallet.
Oh no.
Crap, where's my wallet? Well, I headed back to Office Depot, and thanks be to heaven above, they had found it in the parking lot. And I told my wife that, and I said, we had a good talk about that. Why would anybody lose their wallet? This is completely unnecessary, you know. And she helped me kind of troubleshoot how we can make sure that I don't do that in the future. You think that's a discussion we'd no longer need to have. But my point is, I told her what I needed from her. I just need to share this with you. I just need to share it with just so you'll know. And I love relating to her. And so we need to kind of train the other person what we need from them. It's kind of like if you have an itch on your back, you have to tell them where to scratch.
Yeah.
So those kind of things deepen the relationship, good for the relationship, nutritious for each other. And so don't catastrophize sharing some of your deepest thoughts with a person in the world that is supposed to be closest to you. Well, I don't want to take up all the time there. What thoughts do you have on that? What's a struggle in your relationship where it's kind of hard to talk to your wife about it?
Well, I'll tell you what. Just tell me where to send the check, and I'll send it in the mail. Man, I'm getting a free session today. Well, dude. So you were talking about words, right, and how important it is to use the proper language. And I think it was Jim Rohn, one of the guys I used to study his books, and he's a great business philosopher, kind of an older generation. But he said that words are so important. You're right, because when I use the word vulnerable to my wife, that for me, that puts her in a position to hurt me rather than to be my helpmate. If I'm vulnerable to her, then now that puts her in an aggressor
Yeah,
stance.
there's no other situation where that's a good thing. You know,
It's
vulnerable to cancer, vulnerable to tornado, vulnerable to home invasion, vulnerable to COVID, vulnerable to prostate cancer. None of that is ever good. I don't know how that word has come to be used as a good thing. And the weird thing is, since you've heard it with a negative connotation so often through your life, consciously you can make that switch consciously, but subconsciously it still has an adverse impact on your brain. What I'm being with my wife is genuine and
Yeah.
honest and forthcoming and connected. That's what I'm being. And none of that makes me vulnerable to anything, you know, doesn't make it vulnerable to anything. You might say, well, but if someone heard that you're doing that, they'd make fun of you. But see, I'm not vulnerable to that because someone's insults to me are just words, air, literally air set into motion. It
Hmm.
An insult is no more than that.
Yeah.
And in Arkansas, where I am, yesterday we had 40-mile-an-hour winds. Now, if I can stand and withstand a 40-mile-an-hour wind, I'll guarantee you no one can hurl a 40-mile-an-hour wind gust insult my direction. You can't do it. We can measure the airspeed. You can't do it. So, how can I withstand one and not the other? And some men think that they're so vulnerable to insults. Why is that? It's just air sent in emotion. Um, so that's a little bit of a cognitive restructuring there. Well, you said that you had a rapid fire thing that you're going to jump into, so I'm getting buckled down for that.
All right. So before we get into rapid fire, this is our code word family when we want to land the airplane. But be sure to go onto his YouTube channel. It's Therapy Bites on YouTube. He's actually got two podcasts on there, if I'm not mistaken. One is like a coffee type where you kind of sit down, and the other one is more kind of what we're doing. And I love the way that you guys do it. I love the comfortable atmosphere. Everybody's got their own color microphone. It's so I love it. But before we get into rapid fire, is that your baby? Is that your idea, or is that something that you partnered up with?
It was. I don't know how I got that idea. I started to write a book. I've been writing 6 books for 10 years, so maybe I'll finish one of them one of these days. But I was told that you need to have a place to advertise the book, and so I thought, well, maybe I'll do a podcast first and share that out with people and get some more ideas about what to write about. And I just thought it'd be fun, informative, maybe helpful. So we started it, and I had 3 people team up with me for a while, and it was all free, all pro bono. So eventually, they had to go get real jobs, which just left me. So I'm a solo podcaster now, and we're at episode 82, and I have another 20 something episodes in the hopper. On the tarmac, trying to get those edited and dropped. And I swap up one week. I'll do a long form interview podcast like this one. And then every other week, I'll do a short form, just a 15 to 18-minute podcast. I was doing a one called Executive Espresso, which is a live stream, just
Yeah.
like this one. No prep, no editing, no anything. It was live and went out. So I'm doing one of those on Saturday with our wonderful friend Emma Chung.
Okay.
And you guys be on the lookout for that. She's going to share her wisdom with us. And I'll get back to doing a couple of those a week. At one time, I was doing 7 podcasts a week.
That's a lot.
Got to be a heavy workload.
Yeah.
So I took a break over the holidays, and I'll get back to work soon. But thank you for the shout out. I appreciate that.
So is that your primary source if I send people is to your YouTube channel?
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do a thing called the question and question, which I try to come up with some cool psychology type questions. It's kind of a Jeopardy style game show thing where I give the answer and then the audience has to come up with a question. And I was doing that every Tuesday and Thursday, but like I said, that's a pretty heavy workload. And I thought I would take a break and spend more time with my wife and, practice what I preach. But we'll be back at it soon.
Well, I appreciate you, and I'm very grateful you have your time. Question number one: what made you do this interview?
Oh, I met you and I thought it'd be thrilling, and I just love to talk to new people.
What has been your biggest fear in life?
Um, Gosh, my biggest fear in life. Um, Something bad happening to my family.
Okay. And by the way, if there's a question that is unanswerable, you can just say pass. So, okay, next question. Who are or who was your superheroes growing up, or superhero? Who was a superhero growing up?
His name was Robert Curtis, and that was my dad.
Okay. That's awesome. I remember hearing your story, so that's awesome. What would you say is your first memorable victory?
Uh, Whittling a soapbox derby car when I was in the Boy Scouts,
That's awesome. What makes you get up every single day?
hoping to make a difference.
What is your favorite food?
Oh boy, I'm so boring. Um, I hate to say, my shredded wheat with blueberries that I eat every day except for the days I'm fasting.
Do you have a dream vehicle?
Yeah, I drive it. It's my dad's 2004 F-250 four-wheel drive truck that I got after he was killed on the job.
Do you sing?
I actually have a minor in voice, and but I can't sing like I used to. I love singing. I sing when no one's listening. But I used to do lots of performances, and I was in the college choir at Lyon College for for 4 years, and we traveled all over, and I gave a lot of recitals. But yeah, I got a minor in voice, and so I love to sing. I just can't do it very well anymore.
Well, I can tell you carry your voice very well. So
Oh,
that's
thank you.
how about
Some people sound that sound like have a deep Southern accent, but I can't hear it myself.
I don't hear it. I think they have the accent.
I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, transplanted to Arkansas, so that comes with its own special accent.
Home of the famous hot chicken. Am I right?
Well, I don't know what chicken that is. Nashville, Tennessee.
I heard it's hot chicken is what they call it.
Oh, really? See, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
that's who invented hot chicken.
Oh my.
Yeah. Okay. Two more. Then we are landing the plane. How much money is too much?
Um, any amount that takes your focus off of the main thing in life.
And the final question is, what is your desire for this generation?
Um, Gosh, I've never thought about that. Um, to make a difference, find a way to make a difference. Find a way to make a difference. Everybody can do that, regardless of money or status or fame or fortune or education. Everybody can make a difference. If you're at the local convenience store and you find someone to smile at, you may be the first smile that person has seen in a long, long time. And there's always, always, always room in the world to make a difference. Hold the door open for somebody. Forget about all the political correctness crap, and hold the door open for somebody. Let somebody in front of you in the line at Walmart wave at somebody. If somebody flips you off, wave back at them and smile.
Yeah.
That's just their way of saying hello. I guess.
Yeah.
Really, what that means is I can shoot an arrow. I'll let you guys Google that. Middle finger just means I'm an archer. I know how to pluck an arrow. So don't take it personal, And I think it's a long answer, but I think we take things much too personally. I'm very, very shocked at that. I like to welcome everybody to have their own experience. I'm not here to choose anybody's experience for them. I don't want anybody choosing my experience. I think we should be live and let live. I do love debate. I've been kind of shocked on social media. I thought that people would want to discuss things openly, but a lot of people just want to hear what they already believe. They just want their own preconceived notions reinforced. I think that's very dangerous. And I think that we should be willing to challenge yourselves and challenge each other. And I guess I've talked myself into the answer. The word would be metacognition. Think about, become an expert at critically thinking about your own thinking. The most valuable thing you can do in life is critically think about your own thinking.
That's some powerful advice, and I learned quite a bit in our. Now we just hit 1 hour, so I'm very grateful. My desire started with my boys. I have 4 kids, but my desire for my boys is to be the man that they were created to be, and everything that you mentioned is all encompassed in what my desire for them, but also to be generational in their thinking and not just for themselves.
Oh, yeah.
And I am excited. Just, there's a lot of things. Social media has been a mixed bag for me as well, but I'm excited to see that there's avenues and there's my footprint has expanded because of social media in terms of being able to share. And you are by far, you're in my top 7 in people that I've met. And I'm very grateful for that. I'm generationally speaking, I think we need more men like yourself.
Thank you.
To teach people not just what it is to be a man. You're talking about opening the door for someone, and I was just thinking, you know what? I open the door for whether it's a girl or a guy. It's
Yeah,
it's
I
the
don't care.
same.
Yeah.
Like it's not chivalry. It's just being a good person, a good man.
Yeah. Just be a kind person, so try to give something back, and I often tell men, or ask men, if you have a daughter, would you want your daughter's husband speaking to her the way you speak to your wife? And if not, you're doing something wrong. If you're a mother, would you want your daughter-in-law speaking to your son the way you speak to your son's father, your husband? And so behavior should be replicatable. Anybody could do it and they'd be better for it, and sustainable, something that you can do long term. It's reliable, works every time or most every time. So if whatever behavior you're engaging in is not replicatable and not reliable or sustainable, I would check my thinking.
Well, Dr. Heath, I'm grateful. Thank you for your time. We will do this again sometime. I would love to do this organically at some point. So I do travel a lot. So who knows? Maybe in your city we'll meet up at some point. But thank you for your time. And anybody wants to connect with him, his socials are Therapy Bites, and the other one is mention your other social media handle on X again.
Well, I do the at Real Men Psych, which is basically for men and those that love men, about healthy masculinity. And then the main one is at Therapy_Bites.
Okay.
And just, follow the feed. If there's a way I can bring value, you have a question, put it in the feed. I'm sure others could benefit from that. If you're not comfortable putting it in the feed, go ahead and send me a DM. I try to get to those as quickly as possible. And I'm just here to maybe help out, make a difference, clear up some misunderstandings in my field of psychology.
Well, thank you again, brother. Much appreciated.
Hey, and thank you for the work you're doing. You're making a difference, so keep up the good work.
Well, iron sharpens iron, brother.
So, hey, all the best to you and your family. Have a great afternoon.
So after we end it, we'll be in the back, and I'll just say my final goodbyes to you. Awesome. Family, thank you for being here. As I always say, thank you for your time. For those of you that tap the screen, thank you for your hearts, your data, all that good stuff. But most importantly, guys, thank you for your time. On behalf of Dr. Heath and myself, we are grateful that you spent time with us today. And as I always say, love you guys. God bless you guys. Ahui ho, aloha, and mahalo. Chee-hoo.